Good morning, everyone. No, it's all right. It's nice weather to be out today. So appreciate y'all being here. We wrapped up Wednesday night talking about anger. We're going to dive into avoiding pride. It's a topic I enjoy talking about it because I think it's something we all, whether we admit it or not, probably deal with to a degree. So. Let's go to God in prayer before we start. Lord, thank you so much for the day you've given us, the safety you've given us as we've traveled in. We know there are many of our brothers and sisters who cannot be here because of road conditions or sickness or whatever it may be. Be with them, Lord. Be with all the teachers this morning as they are leading class. Give them a good remembrance of the things they prepared to talk about. And we pray that you're glorified in everything that we say and do here this morning and every day in our lives. Help us be mindful of those who are sick and however we can help those situations. And Lord, maybe always do the right thing. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. So just some quotes by, I've never read anything from C.S. Lewis. I know some of you probably have. Just some quotes from him as we dive into this. C.S. Lewis says, "There is one vice which no man in the world is free, which everyone in the world loathes when he sees it in someone else, of which hardly any people except Christians ever imagine that they are guilty themselves. According to Christian teachers, the essential vice, the utmost evil," which is interesting, "is pride. Pride gets no pleasure of having something, only having more of it than the next man. If everyone else became equally rich, clever, good-looking, there would be nothing to be proud about. It's the comparison that makes you proud, the pleasure of being above the rest. Pride always means enmity. It has caused misery in every nation and every family since the world began." I don't want you to answer this, but I want you to just kind of think about it in your own lives. Is there, in your relationship, is there any relationships? Is there any enmity or hostility in them? In your family, in your marriage, church, or others? And where does that enmity, or another word for enmity, hostility, exist? Is it on their side or is it on your side? Whose stance is more important if enmity or hostility exists in your life? Go ahead. Yep. Yeah, it's on their side, right? It's not going to. Right. That's a good point. I should have underlined the other side, emphasizing that. Typically, when you deal with pride, it's somebody else's fault, not yours. In fact, if you want to find out how proud you are, the easiest way is to ask yourself. He had this test and this quote that I found. So we're going to take it. Don't want you to answer, just want you to think about it to yourself. How much do I dislike it when other people snub me? Someone just kind of, just doesn't care, just discounts what you say or discounts you. Or how much do I dislike it when they refuse to take any notice of me? Does it bother me? Do I get aggravated about those things? How much do I dislike it when someone shoves their oar in? I had to Google what that meant. Shove your oar in. So if you're having a conversation or whatever, and somebody just pops up, just starts inserting their own opinion about the situation, how much does that? How much do you dislike that? Patronize me. How much do I dislike when someone patronizes me or shows off? Do we get upset when someone shows off whatever they're showing off? If we answer yes to those, or if we get a little spun up about some of those things, then maybe we all got some pride that we're dealing with. C.S. Lewis says that talks about pride competing against pride, your pride competing against my pride, vice versa. I want to be the big noise at the party, and that I'm annoyed at someone else being the big noise. Someone else gets all the attention or whatever. Maybe pride plays a role in that. So, do you ever find yourself competing with others in your life? Somebody has a job. Like, that's a really cool job. I wish I did something cool like that. Or does it affect you in a way that's negative. When people talk about their vacations or whatever, where they go, or material things, possessions that they have, popularity that they might have, do we compete with each other's kids? Do we compare them or grandkids in some people's cases? Can it become competitive? And I think we would all answer yes. And I think we touched on this in sinful anger. What can comparison do? What good can come from comparison? Sometimes not a lot of good. Any thoughts about those before we dive in? Yeah. Right. Yeah, there is some of that in there. Could be. Well, we got envy next. So if you hold, envy is next class, Master Lord willing. But there is something to be said about not feeling good enough to do stuff for God or whatever. I'll never be there, never be that. So yeah, and again, it's a comparison thing. When you look at it. He talks about, I think he mentions the Bathsheba incident, and we look at this through the lens of C.S. Lewis, having more than the other person. We talked about David's wives, Mickey and Luke did the class about, was it last quarter? Or the quarter before that? Time gets away. We talked about David in a couple quarters ago and all his wives that he had. And I remember you talking about Abigail specifically. She was a beautiful woman and very discerning. So someone that he coveted and other ladies and concubines. I didn't look up the character of these other ladies, but he had concubines as well. And we think about this. Pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only having more of it than other people do. And the next man, David seeing Bathsheba on the roof, and someone said to him, and he inquires, someone said to him, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And we could make a case here for blindness being caused by pride. Nathan's story to David, the rich man had everything he'd ever wanted, but he took what the poor man had instead. David did not realize it was him he was talking about. Just didn't realize what he was doing until someone kind of pointed it out to him. So I asked this question. You have anybody in your life, someone who will say, hey, what you're doing is not cool. Someone who's not afraid to get really, really in your crawl, so to speak, with some things. Do you have somebody in there in your life that would do it? And how would you react if someone did? Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. You guys with older kids, does that stop comparing? I was hoping somebody would confirm that because I was going to say, does it? Not to depress you and make you sad about it, but it does. It doesn't really stop. And it's funny because, like you said, there'll be an older child that has no clue they have this, and then a younger sibling will be like, well, that's mine. You haven't touched that in months. You know what I mean? Just I hope you fare better than the rest of us with it. We were on you remember us being on a houseboat with Cleve? Did you just think of that? We weren't even married yet. We were still dating. We were on a houseboat with Sarah Beth's sister and brother-in-law. And he had these two daughters sitting there, and they were comparing. They were doing the same thing. Same thing happened. Yeah. And Cleve said, you know what happens when we compare? And nobody really answered. And Jessica were like, what happens? We need to know the rest of this. We were on a clip, so we never did ask. So, but I wish we would have. I wish they would have explained a little more about that. So yeah, it happens. But how would I react if someone comes up to me and says, what you're doing is not cool? And would it matter who it is? Yeah. Okay. A spouse. Yeah. Right. This is what you asked for. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Sure. I think that would go with that. Somebody who's you're really close to, been in and around all your life, and grown up with, or whatever, really, really close to, have a lot of connections to. That would be the same thing. What about this? Hey, mom. Hey, dad. What you're doing is not cool. How's that land, Matt? Okay. Yeah. I think it would depend on the situation. There are situations where you might need it. Yep. Go ahead, Ron. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. It's true. I mean, you didn't pour enough juice in my cup. That's not cool. I mean, that's not really a thing to get spun up about. Yeah. I mean, I don't anymore. I don't pour drinks anymore, but I have. I have. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're not cool. Uh, mm. So to God's creation. It's a good of God's creations. It's a good thing you don't hunt. You know what I mean? It'd be bad. So yeah. An elder, obviously, I think they. Oh, go ahead, yes, sir. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Sure. And from here versus here. Yeah. from here versus here, that's different, right? Yeah, random is what I meant. A random person. Sorry, I abbreviate words whether they make sense or not. Yeah, a random person. It's one more letter. I don't know why I didn't put it on there. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's true. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of risk on their part to even bring this up. Yeah, that's I hadn't thought about that angle. It's a good point. If a negative reaction from any of these, would that be an indication that there's some pride that I'm dealing with? What do y'all think? Yeah, I would think there's some level there, and maybe the sources depending on it too. You know, thoughts about this? If we look at the kings, you can do kind of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, about blinded by power, prideful leaders in Israel embraced the corrupt view of God, trusted in their own wisdom and power, invited His judgment, which fell with disastrous results. So the book of Judges, we talk about it's an up and down, obedience, lack of obedience. Nathan and David, after Nathan pointed out to David, he was filled with guilt. It's going to change, right? You know, to your point, your story there. Psalm 51:10, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew me in a right spirit. So I think we all know where pride comes from. Mark 7:21-23 kind of tells us that. Comes from within. There's other things in that list of scriptures too. Pride comes from within. All the other ones do too. And the author asked this to me. I don't know if you looked at this, Mickey. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I wonder if you could maybe. Has there ever been discipline in a church, and maybe others could answer this too, because of pride? You don't recall. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I would say anytime discipline has to take place, there's a level of that in there anyway. But for the sole reason, um, I don't know if it's ever happened. I don't know if anybody ever experienced that or not. Then I thought that would be not really something that has happened before, but I didn't know. Yeah. I don't even know how you would. How would you even? Yeah. How would you even figure that out? You know what I mean? What would? I guess there'd be some manifestations and stuff. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. If there's there could be some pride involved in that, but we think you've got too much pride. You know what I mean? I don't know how you'd even begin to talk about that. So, pride makes someone weak in faith. How? That's kind of what he talks about as of self. I think he talks about this. It may have been something I looked up on my own. How do we weaken the faith? With how does it make us weaken the faith? Gives us a self-centered focus. It's hard to submit if the focus is on oneself all the time. A resistance to humility. Does faith require humility? I think we'd all agree that it does. Are we limited as human beings about what we can do? Absolutely so, and I think we often forget that sometimes. And how much should we depend on God? And how much do we do? How much do we depend on God? And I guess not acknowledging our limitations, dependence on God is probably a recipe for a resistance to humility. Talking about John the Baptist here, in John 3:22 through 30. John's disciples. If we don't care, let's read that if we don't mind. Someone would. Yes, please. Thank you. So it's John's disciples in 26, what they say. They're all going to him, and John's reply is, look, I already told you this was going to happen. The friend of the bridegroom, which is what he describes himself. My joy is complete now. He has to increase. He must increase, so I must decrease. So we see a tremendous humility and understanding of God's design in John. And if the way we are today as a society and pride, if we were in John's shoes, how would we react the same way? Would we, I must increase, he must increase. If everyone is going to someone else, would it I don't know, bruise our pride, so to speak? Do you think it happens sometimes in any church out there? Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. How things go. So, yeah, I think that attitude, I must decrease, is probably difficult to achieve in a lot of different facets of our life. Paul, to me, this is a little more real world here. He's in prison. We know this account. He's in prison. Some were teaching out of what in verse 15? Rivalry, I think it's what it says in the ESV version. Remember what C.S. Lewis said? Pride is essentially competition. It's competitive by its very nature, while the other vices are competitive only, so to speak, by accident. Could there be some desire? You think there was some desire in this situation to start some type of competitive preaching in prison? It seemed very, very likely. If that were the case, is Paul playing the game here? Right. Yeah, that was his response. What does it matter? Christ is being proclaimed. In the envy class, in the envy lesson, we do talk about a little different angle about this, the same story but a different approach. But yeah, in terms of pride, Paul's like, I don't care. Christ is being proclaimed. What does it matter? So it didn't bother Paul, as long as Christ is being proclaimed. Didn't matter who it was. So should it bother us? I think we would say no, but I think to your point, Sam, sometimes maybe it does. Maybe there's a little pride involved in there. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Jesus, yeah. On the local level. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Being prideful of or defending people, being proud of them, or so to speak. So yeah, that's a good point. How can it make us weak in the faith? Blindness to our flaws. Matthew 7:1-6 talks about the speck and the log. It's easy to see the flaws. It's easy for me to see your flaws, but it's not easy for me to see mine. There's another example of the woman caught in adultery. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery. The penalty of that is stoning. And Jesus said, him who's out sin, cast the first stone. I never noticed this in verse 9. I don't know if it means anything or not, but they all went away one by one, beginning with the older ones. I thought that was interesting phrase. Maybe they're a little more seasoned and they understand what Jesus is talking about. So they're like, well, this is not really worth the battle because you know what Jesus said. So, and Jesus wasn't giving her a pass here, but rather reminding us to use humility, grace, and honesty when passing judgment. Sometimes our pride won't let us discern that our own sins are more glaringly serious than others. We concentrate on sins in others. The Pharisee and the tax collector is an example. And I kind of tried to make this a little real world for me. Can you imagine walking into this building with someone you worship with and either saying to your mind or even out loud in this case, I don't know if they walked in together or not to the temple or what, but if someone got up and prayed, thank God I'm not like the rest of these people in this room. I do this, and this and stuff. I mean, I don't know that's ever happened out loud in a public setting, but mentally, if people thought of that, could that happen? If it's yeah, all that sinning he's been doing, Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. I thank God I'm not like all you other people. So, I don't know if it happened to the Pharisee and the tax collector. I'm sure in all of us humans, because we're flawed, it can happen from a mental standpoint. So, it's easy to criticize others. How often are those flaws we pass judgment on others very similar to the exact same ones that we're dealing with? You just can't admit it because we're blinded by our pride. Sometimes we think that our soul is not in jeopardy because pride is not as bad as fornication. It's not as bad as stealing. It's not as bad as coveting. And other sins that are condemned by God, right? But where does God kind of stand on this? Proverbs 6:19-1. There are 6 things that he hates. Haughty eyes is one of them. Proverbs 16:5. Everyone who's arrogant in his heart is an abomination to the Lord. Be assured he will not go unpunished. And then James mentions that God opposes the proud, he gives grace to the humble. So pride is something that God detests. Any thoughts before we move on? Yeah. Hold on to that, because, I think I'm going to open a can of worms here, but hold on to that for a second. Yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It is equally as bad because it's mentioned. Right. All this stuff. And pride is, like you said, smack dab in the middle of that. So, yeah. Yeah. Right. Mhm. Right. Yeah, I was having a conversation with somebody at the gym about this class that I'm teaching, and pride being one of the topics. And see what C.S. Lewis said, it's the utmost evil. So and I thought that was interesting because the others we think, to Mickey's point, the others we think they're so bad, but pride is, to your point, Sam, is way up there. So let's define pride. A reasonable self-esteem, confidence, satisfaction in oneself, pleasure that comes from some relationship, association, achievement, possession that is seen as such an honor, respect. Exaggerated self-esteem, some Greek words for pride. Think hubris, excessive pride, insolence, or outrage. In Greek mythology, if you dive into any of that, a personality trait that was often punished by the gods. There's some situations where they were turned into different creatures because they had too much hubris or pride. I don't know what that word says, but it says pride, haughtiness, and arrogance. Someone who looks down on others. That one as well. Boastfulness, arrogance, pride, associated with an overestimated of one's own abilities or importance. And all carry the idea of being puffed up or boastful, kind of a high-minded person. Also, pleasure that comes from some relationship associated achievement, possession that is seen as a source of honor and respect. I think I already had that. Is there any, Matt, to your point here, is there any danger in saying we are proud of something? Hang on before we answer. I just want you to follow through on this. Sometimes when we use the word proud to mean that we are pleased with something, our accomplishments, ours, someone else's, our kids, maybe some of their kids. I worked hard for that. I'm proud of that. Acknowledgement that their accomplishments, school, tasks, overcoming addiction. There's a couple people that I've known throughout the years, and they had some issues, and they're got it worked out, and they're on the right track. And every time I have an opportunity to see them on Facebook, and they celebrate their sobriety years or whatever, and I always make a point to say, "Man, I'm really proud of you," for digging out of that. The impact they've had on you. Pride versus pleased. There's other ways to say it. You did a great job. I know the hard work, you did it. You persevered. Congratulations, you deserve this. Is this something we should be conscientious of, recognizing the hard work and dedication of others in their interests? And I said, should we eliminate that from my vocabulary? Are Christians supposed to hate anything? Evil. Okay. So, I hate car problems. I hate smashing my fingers, and I really dislike cold weather. But they are not evil. So, should I say the word hate? Is that what I mean when I say those things? When we say proud, do we mean this? Do we mean all these things that pride is talking about? If not, should I use that word? Thoughts about that? So, is that where you're leading? Yes. Hated everything. Yeah. Yeah. Right. But it is a harsh word, but do you find yourself saying it though? Just it's not what you mean, but you say it. Yeah. Yeah. Right. What? Well, if you heard someone say I hate this person or I dislike this person, is there a difference there? Yeah, I think so. So yeah, but it's not what I mean when I say hate. I just say the word hate. So, same thing with proud. It's not what I mean, so should I use it? Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, for this situation right here, someone has it doesn't work on the screen. Huh, interesting. Overcome addiction or whatever that. I mean, that's pretty good. There's a lot of work to do that, you know. So is it something? I mean, I could see. I'm proud of this. You know, I really worked hard, or any of the accomplishments. I mean, yeah, sure, yeah. Getting it. Yeah, that's true. I think so. Yeah, I think we all. Right. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. 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 Right. It is. Yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. But how do I communicate to my child really, really proud of the work that you did? I mean, we want them to know that we were pleased with what they do. You know what I mean? How do I get into that? I mean, it's really seriously something I struggle with. How do I get into that and tell them these things without using the word pride? There's some things that I thought you could say, but what are your thoughts? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. 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 Yeah. It's good. Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. 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 Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Sure. That's a good point. Think about this. I want to come back to this because I know some other people that may have some other thoughts that should, Lord willing, be here. But we'll begin there again. We'll just dive back into this one. So thank you. Thank you.